Welcome back to Flight Path, everybody. We are so excited that you are tuning in for another action-packed episode. My name is David Shaw, CEO and co-founder of Tern, joined by Molly Johnson, our head of product, and Jade, a product lead, special projects, doer of all things. And we have an awesome episode for you. If this is your first Flight Path, this is a time where we kind of connect on Friday afternoon and we reflect on everything that Tern got done in the week. We give you a little bit of a sneak peek on what's coming, and we kind of take you behind the scenes of what it's like to be building a technology company like Tern. So if you are using Tern for your business, go ahead and click that subscribe button. This is the best way to stay up to date on all the new tools, features, and things that are coming that will help you grow your travel business. And if you're just thinking about Tern and kind of exploring it, you're also in the right place. You'll get to know us, the people that are helping kind of craft the product, and you'll get an inside look into how we think and approach these types of problems. And so also click on that subscribe. And again, for those of you that leave comments, we do see those. We do appreciate those. We do read every single one of them. And so we are grateful for the comments, the likes, and really just kind of sharing the word about the podcast. So we have lots to cover today. We're going to talk about some events that we have coming up. We're going to be talking about new features that just launched in terms of kind of commissions. We're going to be talking about email updates and trip funds and all kinds of good stuff. And we're going to be talking about what's ahead for some of the things we're looking at for Q2. But we're going to start off with some save the dates right off the bat. We have a very busy March when it comes to travel. We are starting off the month in Orlando, visiting kind of a host agency conference. We'll be doing a presentation on AI. So super excited about that. Then we will be at the ASA River Cruise Expo in Vienna. We're going to be hosting a happy hour. So if you or anybody that you know is coming, we'd love to see you at the happy hour that we're hosting. You can find all the details of that on our community page. So if you've used Tern to Learn before, we've actually started posting all the events in that same site. So it's just community.tern.travel. You'll have to log in if you don't have an account. It's very quick and it is separate from the Tern app. But then go ahead and click on the events tab. You'll see the ASTA cruise there and you can register with a click of a button. We'd love to have you join us. After that, we're going to Las Vegas later in the month for the Las Vegas Travel Agent Forum. And we are also hosting kind of a lower key suite party there for people that are friends of Tern or are Tern users. And again, you can find the details of that on the community page. We'll also be doing a keynote presentation. We'll be doing a panel. So we're going to have a big presence there. So we'd love to see you. We really do prioritize these kind of events where we travel and we'd love to connect and meet all of you in person. So please come find us. Please come talk to us. Please register for those of you attending the events. We would love to see you. So now that we've got my very long monologue out of the way, Molly, Jade, welcome. Molly, how are you this week? Jade, we're going to come to you next.
No, week 2 back from maternity leave. And so sleep deprived, but feeling good to be back with the team. I got a little knocked out this week being sick, but feeling a little better today. So excited by some cool things that we shipped. I know we talked a lot last week about it, but we did officially ship commission types, which is just a huge step forward for agencies tracking commission. And if you caught last podcast, you might have noticed a fun little bug we stumbled upon. We were basically live testing with you all because it wasn't out yet. And that is fixed. Don't worry. So we fixed that bug, we shipped the feature, and excitement so far from our agency partners.
Yeah, it's been really cool. And the agency kind of community group, I just saw like them posting. They're like, we're so excited to try these new features and really get them. And it is always it's always special when you see people kind of excited about what the teams work so hard to build. And Jade, we've got some other kind of little fixes that we shipped this week as well. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, just to follow up on what Molly said about commission types, we had been working on multiple pieces of that project to really bring it all together for commission rules. So it was extremely exciting, a short week, but felt like we got a lot done, including that big launch for commission types and wrapping up that project. But yeah, we also launched a few smaller things. So one was the ability to automatically move to the next step in an itinerary when a client approves the trip. We had heard a lot of frustration about this, that the client approved the trip and then they were taken back. They weren't taken into what they needed to do next, like authorized payments. So you had to follow up with them as an advisor and it just took a lot of back and forth. So we're excited to enable that. And, we hear your feedback and exciting. It's always exciting to get updates like that out. A few other things that we included in the product update that I don't know if we talked about last week. We added a new document type for tickets and vouchers, also a high top request in Canny. We've updated the image gallery and carousel on activities so that it matches group trips. This is something else that we heard a lot, that visual experience on group trips looks so nice, and we want to bring it to more places in the app. And then we've made a quick fix for credit card authorization and how that's selected. Maybe we talked about that one last week, but that one was exciting, something we see in support a lot. So
yeah,
It's like,
I ran into this all the time. It's like you add the CVV code and then you go to submit authorization and it errors and it's like, select the credit card. It's like, well, I just added my CVV code. Of course that's the credit card I want to select. So little things like that add up for sure.
yeah.
and it is cool, just like kind of like that like polish, right? And making sure that we're kind of creating the time for that. And those little things do just make it easier for your travelers to use. It makes it easier for you to use. It makes the site easier to maintain when we think about consolidating code, like the image pictures. So, it's always nice to have some kind of hygiene weeks, right? Where like we're actually just polishing some of those things up and really addressing it. And it was fun. I think Chloe posted in the Facebook group an example of a trip with the documents. And it was like so cool just to see like there's I think like 25 like ticket booking documents that were just like now nicely like organized, and tickets and vouchers, and like it was really cool to see.
David, something that you like to say a lot is like flows, not features. And even some of these smaller things that feel more like, features, it's really about the flow, right? Like making sure that users don't get stuck when they're submitting authorization or when they're approving a trip. Like completing these loops and making it really easy end to end is always the goal.
And finding those breakpoints, right? And I think, like you said, the credit card authorization flow was a great example, and we fixed 2 of those breakpoints where you have a traveler that's going through and they click approve, and they're like, okay, approve the trip. I did what I needed to do. And the approve button was actually like left over from pre-credit card authorization primarily, right? And like has some utility today, but we're like, oh yeah, that is confusing. And so literally just updating it, so when you click on approve, it just redirects to credit card authorization, makes all the sense in the world. And now that flow has been kind of restored. And then the same thing is true, like another break in the flow that we saw was can't be blank. And it's like, oh, like now I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I'm reaching out to my advisor. It's like, and now it's just like just a default, right? So those little things. So shout out to the community, right? Both of those things were in Canny, highly voted. Both of those things were posted on the Facebook group, right? Like that. Sometimes it's just like what we need, right, to kind of really understand like where these breakpoints are and really prioritize fixing them. So really cool to see that and make some of those improvements. We've also been like, again, shout out to Matthias here, like battling, I think it's the right word, with this email migration. Molly, you want to talk about how that has been going and like maybe refresh people on like why we're doing this anyway and like what the benefit hopefully will be, and like, yeah, just all the things.
Yeah, well, and in general, it's kind of an interesting week because it's a short week, and then I'm going to talk about this email migration that we're slogging through. We're also going to show you something else we've been working on that's like a little behind the scenes, but I think going to be really exciting. And then we have one more feature that's coming next week that should ship on Monday. So it feels like I'm like, oh, we did actually ship a lot, but there's also just a lot behind the scenes that, you're not necessarily seeing this week that the team has been working on. And one of those is our email integration migration. So, for those of you who don't know, you can integrate your email today with Tern so that when you actually send emails, it comes from whatever email client you have, and you can sync your entire inbox into Tern as well to triage things onto trips and to track them. It also syncs with your calendar, so you can, automatically schedule things, think like Calendly, stuff like that. So there's like a ton of value in doing this integration and Tern, I believe, is the only, travel CRM that does this in this way. And it's a really powerful tool. But it's a gnarly problem to integrate with every type of email client, right? And so we use a third-party provider for that called Nihilus. It initially took months to build this integration with Nihilus. And, I think like 6 to 12 months after we had initially released it, turns out they had to do a major overhaul of their technology. So in order to do that, there's a ton that we had to transition in order to be compatible with their new version. And there's a lot of benefits to their new version. But a lot of things break when you try to completely kind of change how the integration works. Like they fundamentally had to re-architect a lot of how the integrations work. So it's been a journey, to put it in the most positive light I can. We're at the very tail end of it. We're like officially transitioning accounts kind of in mass over to the new version, and we tried to catch as much as we could in testing and QA. But we are also, just as we migrate more and more accounts, finding new things that we missed, or that just were hard to tell in testing environments. So we're fixing those like an hour after we see them. Like, we're really staying on top of all the errors, the Facebook community support requests. And it's just kind of a slog. We're just like knocking off those errors. We're seeing, I think we're at like the tail end of it, but things like image sizing, some deliverability things that we're working through on an individual basis. Yeah, we're just kind of having to whack-a-mole the different things that are coming up.
And just to give it a kind of an example, of some of the like technical challenges here, right? Different email providers. One of the big kind of structural shifts from the previous version to this version is that Nihilus is helping us connect kind of more directly to the provider themselves, as opposed to being this kind of intermediary and sort of a standardization layer, which has a lot of benefits in terms of speed and being able to kind of take advantage of unique features of each provider. But it also means we're sort of exposed to the differences of each provider. So Microsoft, for example, doesn't actually have a concept of threaded messages. So if you think about how you see a thread, and you may be a Microsoft user thinking to yourself like, well, no, when I look at my email, I see the whole thread. But they don't actually have that as like a data model in their system. They handle it very differently than Google and other platforms would handle it. And so now we have to think about like, okay, well, if somebody's using a Microsoft account, how do we actually keep track of the fact that all these emails are related in a thread? And just making that migration is actually really tough. And you start to add on top of that the volume. And so during the transition, we've sort of been like slowly transitioning between versions. And if there's errors, that's fine. We want to know the errors. We knew there were going to be errors. And so we've set it up in a way that doesn't actually disrupt your workflow. But during the migration, we may have gotten 30,000 kind of retrying emails, which are basically jobs, right? That are like, they didn't go out the first time. We're going to retry that. And so they start to stack. And so pretty soon you've got this like buildup of like requests that is almost like a denial of service attack, which is kind of this thing where it's just like, no volume to turn. And then all of a sudden it's like 30,000 requests. And so some of you may have seen like interesting performance things that we were talking about in the Facebook group a week or two ago. And that was basically like all these emails trying to retry at the same time. And so thinking through like, how do you clean that up? How do you scale the database? All this to say, it's like, so one of those just gnarly technical problems, and that gives me all the confidence in the world that like Tern will probably be the only travel CRM that figures this out. Because if it's taking us months to do this, I think it would take anybody else out there years to do this. So we think it's cool. It's a key differentiator. Travel is email centric, and so it's totally worth it. But like, wow, we'll be excited when this migration is done.
Yeah, we've joked we're going to get Matthias some sort of statue or medal. The whole engineering team has been hard at work on this, but he's really leading the charge and digging into the most gnarly of the issues. So anyways, he's just a hero, champion.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. But so anyway, that's continuing, hopefully wrapping up very soon. And the benefits are going to be real, right? Like even faster sending, like there's a lot of cool things that it does enable us to do. So exciting. The scheduler is starting to look a lot better. If you're on email or Microsoft or Google, like that's a big improvement. So a lot of benefits. It'd be great when it's done and we can kind of refocus on moving the kind of product forward.
And but just a quick plug for the scheduler. If you haven't changed out those links yet, please make sure you change out any external links like on your website or your email signature that were from the previous version. So if you have that new and improved look, then change it out with the new links. We have a little bit more time before those links won't be active anymore, but the sooner the better.
And to clarify that, you don't need to change your forms in Tern. We took care of all that for you, all the migration that we can control. The specific use case though is if let's say when we launched the feature last year, created a link and you put that on your website and it has a link, it should be like NYLS or something, right? It's like specifically directing right to that scheduler. That link will break at the end of March at the latest, right? Could break earlier, but it will break. So if you have that link in an email signature on your website, that's where you need to go and update it with the new link. And Jade emailed out instructions on how to do that. But like you said, if you're just using the Tern forms and offering schedulers through that, all that's taken care of for you. We just obviously can't update your website on your behalf. So,
and we did really try to get our integration provider to have some sort of fix so you didn't have to do this. We tried really hard and it was impossible for them to do. So we tried. Yeah. We promise.
We've had a lot of and I know Matthias and Molly and Jade have had even more of these, but have had pretty direct conversations with this partner around fighting for your user experience basically, and really making sure that we're doing everything we can to make this as seamless as possible. So this was one of those things that just unfortunately was a reality of the migration, but hopefully it's not too disruptive. Let's talk about something else, though, getting out of the trauma of this email provider system. And it's one of those things that's funny. Probably if you're listening to this, hopefully you're huh, I had no idea that this was even happening. And yet it's been probably one of the more traumatic features that we've worked on in the past maybe 2 years since we started the company. And that's fantastic, right? If that's what you're thinking, then you've made our lives better, because that we've worked really hard to make it so that it's fairly obscure. But we're going to talk about something that is the opposite of that, which is really exciting. And that is going to be kind of trip funds and a general update, starting with the first time that trip funds will ever be used in Tern, which Jade, I think, is going to talk us through.
And can we maybe just caveat so people aren't too
Yeah, we should probably hedge. We should hedge. Molly, why don't you talk about set the stage here?
Yeah, no, I think we're really excited to demo the vision that we have here, and we're going to actually be using trip funds and collecting payments for our user conference as kind of a proof of concept of all of this working. So you can kind of see the vision of how this will work in the future. But the caveat is that we are still a ways away from having the right provider from an infrastructure and kind of payment processing standpoint that will make sense long term, so that we can release something like trip funds to all of you. So I don't want you to we're going to give you a preview into what this will look like, but don't get your heart set this is coming soon, because unfortunately we are still having those conversations with vendors.
And we'll give you more of a why behind it too, and what we're optimizing for after this.
But yes, happen and people are it's coming, and then
it's going to be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is coming. It just may not be soon. Yeah. And by soon, we're don't expect it this spring.
Probably not in Q2. I think Q2, no. I think it's, we're aiming to do it as soon as we can. We're taking the time to find the right partner, because we don't want you to also have to onboard onto one and then it doesn't work out and you have to, so we just a little go slow to get things right.
We've seen how hard those migrations are. We don't want to.
No show. Yeah.
Choose the wrong partner here. So.
And we'll talk more about that. We can kind of give more context on that. So, but I think we've caveated it. But now, back to the hype, Jade. Let's.
Yeah, this is really exciting. So you're really getting a first look. I mean, we're just starting to test this. I just saw it for the first time myself yesterday, so I'm still a bit giddy about it. Seeing the full flow end to end. So you're going to see it live, but this really enables, instead of credit card authorization in the flow of group trip sign up, the ability to submit a payment that replaces that authorization page. And I think the best way is just to go through it, and we can add some
comments. Go in.
But I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through the user conference sign up flow here. I'm going to share my screen. This is a test version of the waitlist sign up page that some of you signed up for. And so we're going to click and just sign up for this group trip. Let me share this new tab, and then we're going to go ahead, fill out our details, email. Need to make sure that it's a new one here.
This is another feature in QA right now, so it'll be fun to see if we can do it without any.
I know
we're live QA.
I'm a little nervous, but hopefully no snags. So this is just a custom part of the form that we're testing with here to see how we want to set this up.
All the checkboxes.
Yep, all the checkboxes. Submit. And then next in the flow, we'll be asked to verify our email. Let me grab my code.
And so for those of you, as kind of Jade pulls up the code, like this is the same kind of group registration form, right, that you'll be familiar with, that if you've kind of seen the previous kind of Flight Path podcast, you've built a group, all of this is still the same, which is what makes it so cool.
I missed inventory management when I was out. I got to help plan it, but I missed actually having it be released, so it's exciting.
Yep, inventory management. So we'll select our room here, take that out of the inventory for this user conference test, submit selections, and then we'll be taken to the star of the show, the submit page.
Woo!
So here you can see for this test, we're charging for the cabin and the user conference ticket. We have a deposit and a final balance set up here, and you can see that the authorization has been replaced here with the ability to actually add payment details. So a really seamless flow. Like it feels so smooth. I don't know, like yesterday, I don't know how you felt seeing it, Molly and David, but like it just feels so smooth and like so elegant how it fits in, and as it should. But it's really exciting to see, and we can just go through the flow here. I'll put in.
I mean, if you all caught the previous podcast from last week, I think we all feel another poem coming on to our payment.
Yeah, exactly. I will. Yeah, there'll definitely be a poem about this. And then you can save that optionally, agree, some slightly different language here. And yeah, let's see. There we go.
Boom. So cool. And like if you click view trip, I mean, like that, what's so cool about this, right? Is like it's the same end-to-end flow where like you've gone through, you have the checkout, we've got pricing, we've got the details, we've got the breakdown. You can see like instead of authorized, it's paid, right? And so it feels like one of those things. It's like, oh, you just put it in the credit card form right on the page, but actually it's like, how do you wire that up to all these existing concepts? How do you test that? We've talked on the show before about how like if you anything with pricing is like 3 times the more like complexity that you expect, because there's just so many different drivers, and how to optional selections, how to option blocks, how to room choices, how do all that kind of feed into the pricing engine, and then how do you know what to hand off given deposits, final payments, installments, right? So that end-to-end flow feels magical. And as we've said before, like if it feels magical and simple, that actually took a ton of work to get there. And so this is really, really special.
Yeah. And a great way for us to kind of work out the experience too, really sitting, in the advisor seat, running this group trip and managing the payments here. So it's a really great way to experience it and also kind of test into this flow.
And maybe that's a good transition to talk about two things here. One, as you can see, this is coming along really well, and we will be launching bookings for the Users Conference on March 3rd. So not this coming Monday, but a week from it. And so you'll want to watch your email for an invitation link to sign up. And this is actually how we will structure it. We're going to have a $2,250 deposit kind of due at the time of sign up to reserve that cabin. And then the remaining balance will be due in early April, right? Jade, do you remember the date off the top of your head?
Yeah, at some point in April.
It's like something in early April. What's really cool about this is that it'll give you flexibility to have roommates where like you're splitting the costs across 2 different credit cards, kind of thinking through that whole process. And so we do expect this to sell out if our wait list, which we ask people 4 different times to be, only register if you will attend at this kind of price point, is any indication, we would have sold out in 18 hours. So you will want to keep an eye on that. You will want to take action. You want to be ready. If you're listening to this podcast, we'd love to make sure you're one of the people that are able to attend. And if we do sell out, we will go back to Virgin. We'll ask if we can get more cabins, but they've sort of told us that this sailing is already trending ahead of schedule in terms of sales. So no guarantee that we'll be able to get more inventory from that perspective. So definitely sign up as soon as you get the link. And the second part, maybe kind of transitioning back into the like, what's hard about group funds, right? Especially like you're seeing the product, it's like, it's there. What's hard about this is really like the complexity of processing travel. From a kind of one of the best ways it was explained to me is that from a credit card company perspective, when the client swipes their card, so let's use our users conference as an example, right? You're going to swipe your card on March like Monday, the first Monday in March, would we say this March 3rd? You're going to travel on September 10th. And so you won't actually get the experience that you paid for until September 10th. And so that from the credit card company perspective is risk, because if you don't get that experience in September, they may have to refund your money, and there's no guarantee that they'll be able to get it back from whoever like charged it, right? So that sort of just sits on their balance sheet as risk. They call that the forward deliverability window. And that's what makes travel so complicated from a credit card processing perspective. So if you look at Stripe, which is what we're using here, you have to jump through a bunch of different hoops to kind of get approved to do this. So we, as Tern, have been approved to process travel in this kind of limited capacity. But what we want is we want to be able to provide every kind of agency on Tern a pathway to be able to process travel, assuming you meet the right credit checks, right? You've got kind of like the right balance sheet, right, to be able to manage this risk. And finding the partner to do that is a little bit more complicated. The response that a lot of companies will put in reserves, where like you have to put money in holding, right? This just becomes like a really complicated kind of puzzle between how do you manage risk? There is more risk in travel. How do we find a partner that will kind of give a pathway for what the requirements are to actually process these travel dollars? And so that's what, when we kind of talk about figuring out the right partner, it's figuring that. And we also aspire to make this global. Like we have people in Canada, we have people in Australia, we have people in the UK that are using Tern today, and they ask for these features. And to the point of not wanting to have overhead and maintenance, like we'd really love to find a partner that lets us offer this globally fairly quickly without having to find a Stripe in one country and another processor in another country and all these different kind of complexities. So this is why we've sort of put this into the category of let's go slow and get it right, as opposed to try and just like ship a version of this that makes it way harder to deliver the optimal version long time. And we know that like we get emails every day from people like, I can't switch from ABC system until you have this. Like we feel the pressure. But when we're dealing with your money and your business, like the worst case scenario for us is you process a $35,000 trip and that triggers a flag from your processor and those funds get frozen, which means your clients have paid you, but the processors froze them because they think they're too high risk, which means you can't access them, which means you can't give them back to the client and you can't pay the client. You're on the hook for those funds. So that's like what goes wrong here. It's like take credit card authorization and the risk there. It's like upping the ante dramatically. And we don't want to build products that like, we don't want to partner with a processor that's likely to put your business in that position. And so that's why we are really being thoughtful about this. And we will we'll just sit with the pain and the pressure that we get every day from people who want this feature until we feel confident in the answer that we have for all of you. Long-winded, but Molly, Jade, anything you'd add to that?
No, just, yeah, I mean, I know we spent some time this past fall talking about some of this and got far along with a few that just ended up, frankly, as we dug in more, not being that right partner. So again, like kind of apologies to the community that it's taking longer than we hoped. But again, like doing the right thing, making sure it's right so that we're not having to have any surprises or anything like that. It's so important. So yeah, well said, David. And it is coming. It is very high on our radar. And we have, as you see, like all the tech ready to go. It's just about finding that right.
We know how to build it. It is, yeah, it's figuring out how do we make sure that there's a path. And it's not to say everybody will be, some businesses will be perceived as too risky and won't be able to do this to begin with. And like, we understand that from the processor perspective, but we need clarity on like, what are those requirements? Mm-hmm. And like, how do we make sure that you know if you have approval or not to do that so that you can make the right decisions for your business? And that is shockingly hard to get.
Yeah. We've heard kind of horror stories from other kind of platforms out there where that was not done, and then, you know, funds are frozen and some of these other things. So I'm trying to also avoid some of those mistakes.
On a happier note, we got some cool things coming up. Molly, do you want to talk about what we're working on? We've got next week. What's happening next week?
Lots of things next week. So as I kind of alluded to, we are so close. We're at the finish line for making sure that when you create activities, they do not have to have a specific date and time. It's not going to default to midnight UTC. Is that what it is? Yeah. So that's just going to be huge. It's one of the biggest requested features. I think we talked about this last week. It's a lot harder than meets the eye, but it's at the very, very end finish line. So that should launch early next week, hopefully Monday, maybe Tuesday. And then we are working on two other really good projects. We're making it easier to generate payout statements. So instead of, if you're using our agency tools to pay out your agents, you know that you can export those payouts, but it's kind of one line item per booking for your agents. So these can actually generate a single statement for a pay period for an agent. So you have all of that kind of nicely consolidated, which I think will be a huge win. We've heard over and over, this is kind of the last remaining thing that a lot of agencies need to switch over from other systems. So very excited. We'll be working on that next week. I think it should launch probably early the following week. And then we're also working on, I think we talked about this last week too, but preferred suppliers for agencies. So you can more easily highlight, these are the suppliers that we work with for your agents to select from when they're booking things and adding them to their activities, to make sure from a reporting standpoint that you can kind of track the sales and the commission at a supplier level more easily. And as I mentioned, we're going to take the learnings from that and also make it easier down the line for advisors to say, like, these are the main suppliers that I work with. Because if you've used Tern, you know that we have a giant database of all the suppliers that any advisor has added, and that can save a lot of time, but it's harder to say, like, these are the 100 suppliers that I work
with. And then, which I think all of those are going to be like really exciting projects. And then we're kind of going in, again, a week from this coming Monday to Q2 planning, which we're really excited about. And you can kind of maybe speak to some of the things that are on our mind there, and Molly and Jade can fill in the gaps. But we use these acronyms a lot. And I know some agencies are all about quarterly planning and those types of things. So this will be not, but some people may be like Q2, Q1, like, so our quarters run with the calendar, and it's basically like each quarter of the year. So Q1 is January, February, March. Q2 is April, May, June, and so on and so forth. And so we have some pretty big things lined up for March. Molly talked about some of those. One of the other big things that we're going to start to think about is, I kind of like these things two problems that don't seem related at first, but we think about as sort of fairly related, which are like, how do we make it easy to migrate to Tern, right? If you've got data in all these different systems, which is sort of the core thesis of Tern, is that you probably do, right? You've got a CRM, you've got an itinerary builder, you've got your agency platform. How do you move all those data points to Tern in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming and laborious? So that's like sort of problem set number one. Problem set number two is, how do you, as a new user, come into Tern and really start to wrap your head around, how do things work? How do I set things up quickly? How do I understand like this platform? And so we're not ready to share details of that yet, but like we'll start to work on that problem in March, and we'll continue to work on that problem most likely throughout the spring. And I think that'll be really, I'm very bullish about that.
I think
we're also,
there's a third piece of that too, which is like, how do we also make the experience better when you're not just switching over, getting started with Tern, but when you're pulling in content from external systems into Tern to make your itineraries better. So not only getting started, but I think that experience too of, as you're pulling content from other places, like how do we like think about that problem all together will be a really fun way, I think, for us to frame it too.
And yes, I mean, that one's going to be some of the things we're thinking about. We had a kind of mini kickoff yesterday and did some working on this today. And like, there's going to be some truly groundbreaking things, I think, that come out of that. But we also, one of the things that we're going to spend a lot of time on is, I don't know if back to basics is the right way to think about it, right? But like, there are things in Tern that we like have either built or that we're like close to built, but that like maybe don't work exactly how people would like them to. Or that like we know there's opportunities to take them from like one like good to amazing, right? And so that's going to be another thing that we're looking at this week. I spent a lot of time digging into invoicing, which I feel like means something slightly different to everybody that I talk to, but like really starting to build a mental model of like, what does invoicing in Tern need to look like? And we know that's a major pain point for most of our users, but especially our users in Canada and in the UK and some of these other places where there are regulatory requirements and what you're providing your customers. And so, I would expect that that's a problem that we will solve in the near future. Maybe not in March, but like I would say in Q2, that most likely is on the roadmap. Again, specifics coming here. Forms is another one that probably maybe even before Q2. And then as we think about other kind of themes, this was big in the Facebook group, especially as we get ahead to the summer travel season. Like, how do we maybe think about a fresh coat of paint for the Traveler app? Like, what is that experience looking like? So there's all these things. We're looking at Candy, we're looking at the Facebook group. We're like taking in dozens of conversations between this group every single week, like constantly pressure testing this. And then come a week from Monday, we're gonna get in a room and we're gonna start to put some boxes on a spreadsheet and be like, how much resources are we allocating to what things, and make it happen.
I think maybe the only other bigger area that we'll be talking about is the next levels of investment for group trips. There are certainly like a number of features that we know feel still missing for group trips. So you can set up group trips today, but things like making it easier to have different occupancy rates and stuff like that are big ones on our radar. So we'll be talking group trips as well in Q2.
We've got a lot planned for Q2.
We couldn't even talk about all the things that we're thinking about, but those are some of the biggest buckets for sure.
Big buckets and buckets that like we know are coming up a lot in your conversations. So I think that's like the how we build Tern, right? We've talked about this before, but like especially with the number of users we have now, right? It's like this kind of constant prioritization and tension where like people have different business models, they have different desires, they have different features that they really care about. We have different countries with different regulations. And so, we're still a small team, right? We've got like 10 people on the R&D team, like a little bit more, but like and so it's this kind of constant prioritization, and it's listening and it's learning and it's being flexible. And like, that's what we try and bring. And it doesn't mean that we'll fix everything tomorrow, but it does mean that we'll like be fixing something or building something every single week based on your feedback. And we think that if you do that and you compound that over years, your Tern becomes unequivocally the best operating system for the travel industry that you can ask for. And so that's what we focus on. And, each quarter, it's kind of a fun opportunity to be like, what are the big pieces that we're putting in place there? So lots to come. Any closing thoughts? Otherwise, I think we've covered the agenda. Molly, anything on your mind?
We forgot the most important thing happening next week, which is Brad's back. So
Brad's back. Listener count skyrockets next week. Yeah.
Brad comes back mid next week. He's going to be on the podcast. It's going to be amazing to have him back. So
I know we're going to have to figure it out because I'm flying on Friday. So we're going to have to figure out like when to record.
It might be the most popular episode ever. No David and Brad's back.
That's true. Exactly.
Brad posts it alone. Like
it's Brad, just Brad. Coffee chat with Brad.
Love that.
That is a fun visual. So next week, tune in, subscribe, make sure you click on the little notification wherever you're listening to this, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. I saw somebody, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, post in the Facebook group, like, I just realized I could watch this on my big screen TV during my lunch break, which was kind of fun. So I was like, that's like a little weird to think about our faces all on a big TV somewhere. But if that's you, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. And we will see you in the next episode. Have a fantastic week, everybody.